People say AI is a bubble, the biggest of all time, but what's actually happening is way crazier than that. To understand why, there's one chart you need to see. This is the chart all the serious AI researchers obsess over. A chart that has nothing to do with stock prices and everything to do with what AI can actually do. Some AI scientists see this line and feel hope, but others feel their stomach crawl with terror because they know what's about to happen. The meter graph has become a load-bearing institution on which our global stock markets depend. I'll show you this and the 8 most important charts to answer the question if AI is actually a bubble. To be clear, in some ways it could be, but by the end of this video, you'll realize most people have no idea what they're talking about and why what's actually happening is way more important. Researchers at nonprofit research org, Meter, set out to answer a critical question. How big of a real-world job can an AI complete entirely on its own? Not to hype it, just to measure it. AI companies love to game their benchmarks to make their AI models seem powerful, but they can't bullshit this one. Nope, their AI can either do the real-world job or it can't. That is why this one matters so much. It's the when will AI actually take your job indicator. The researchers found a shocking trend. In 2020, GPT-3 could write an email, a task that took 15 seconds. Then, a year ago, it could fix a bug. Now, AI can code up an entire app from scratch. The complexity of tasks an AI could do, completely on its own, doubled in just months. And then, a few months later, it doubled again and again. It's been doubling roughly every 7 months since 2019. Today's AIs can do tasks 100 times longer than 5 years ago. And in another 5 years, it'll be chewing through tasks 10,000 times bigger. This is a huge deal on its own. But what does it mean will happen next? You've probably heard of Moore's Law, which for decades has been perhaps the single most important force in technology. Basically, the power of computer chips consistently doubles every 1.5 to 2 years. Your iPhone has more processing power than a skyscraper-sized room of computers in the 1970s. It's exponential. And Meter has discovered a type of Moore's Law for AI, except it's 3 times faster than the original Moore's Law. Basically, GPT 5.1 can now do real-world software engineering tasks that take an expert human over 3 hours of work. That's more than triple what even the best models could do just 1 year ago. Drew from the future here. Actually, progress is happening even faster than when I started writing the script. Claude Opus 4.5 can do almost 5-hour-long tasks. We're now on the faster new trend line of AI progress doubling every 4 months, as opposed to the old trend line of every 7 months. It's not slowing down, it's the opposite. And in 2025, AI improvements started speeding up, even after skeptics confidently declared that AI was going to slow down or stagnate. They have been saying this every year after year, and they have been wrong again and again and again. There was no wall. The numbers just keep going up. If the trend continues, AIs will be doing 8-hour-long tasks by 2026. This matters because that's a complete workday for a human worker. Then, in 2028, week-long tasks. So what does that mean for you? Well, if AI agents can actually perform week-long tasks, they'll be able to replace white-collar jobs across the entire economy. Okay, but when is this bubble supposed to pop then? Well, here's the thing. Some people see a line going up and to the right and think bubble. Stock market crash waiting to happen. But stock prices measure investor sentiment, hype, fear, greed. They go up when people feel optimistic and crash when reality disappoints. But technology curves measure reality, not feelings. Capability, physics. Moore's Law didn't pop after 50 years. Chip power kept doubling because the physics allowed it. The Meter trend isn't measuring hype. It's measuring what AI can actually do. Bubble implies bullshit, fake. But this isn't fake. This is real exponential progress in economically valuable work. So this is the current plan of the AI companies. Optimistically, they claim they'll take your job. Pessimistically, they say they might destroy the world. And it doesn't stop there. Keep going, we get month-long tasks, then year-long tasks. Imagine accomplishing a year's worth of work in your job in just a few days. AI agents will run at 100 to 200 times human speed. So we take a month to accomplish what they will do in an hour. They can read an entire book in seconds. Can you? They can write an entire book in 1 minute. Can you? Now imagine that for everything. I mean, this is how we look like to the AIs. We're as slow as statues. What happens when you can leave the AIs alone for 3 days? And in that time, they accomplish what a human-run company would take an entire year to achieve. And most importantly, what happens when they start rapidly self-improving and making stronger AIs? AIs making stronger AIs isn't hypothetical. It's already happening. But we'll come back to that. Now here's what confuses most people about AI progress. The exponential curves I just showed you are real, but they hide something critical. AI advancement is jagged. Here's what that means. Take the GPQA benchmark, PhD level questions that you can't just Google. 1 year ago, AI models could answer 60% of these questions. Today, they're approaching 90%. That's better than the human experts themselves on graduate level science questions. But at the same time, AI still make embarrassing mistakes that no human would make. AI progress deniers love sharing these mistakes, but actually many of these are outdated and no longer accurate, like AI can't draw hands or count R's in strawberry. And journalists fall for it constantly. They'll publish articles titled, "What AI Still Can't Do," based on research that's years out of date by the time it clears peer review. The public sees these headlines and thinks progress has stalled, but it hasn't. So what explains this paradox? 5 years ago, the AI GPT-3 was a fun toy, and it was barely useful for the tasks of a human job. Then 3 years ago, ChatGPT and GPT-4 came out, and the AI could help you in some tasks, like marketing or basic coding. And now, the AI has a jagged frontier. Sometimes it's amazing, sometimes it's dumb. But the next step, the AI is unbelievably intelligent, but for some reason it fails at obvious things. And here's why this progression matters. Every AI capability starts at 0. Then, with more compute, more data, better algorithms, it crosses a threshold, and suddenly, AI can do something it couldn't do before. The capability goes from impossible to reliable, seemingly overnight. This is the reason why the godfathers of AI and so many researchers are terrified that their invention might cause literal human extinction. Is because scaling computing power just works. For a long time, professional AI skeptics have been saying that the scaling pre-training paradigm is dead. Basically, the idea that you couldn't grow increasingly smarter AIs by throwing more text data and computing power at them. He has been saying this year after year and has been proven wrong year after year. The jagged frontier doesn't mean AI is hitting limits. It means we're watching new capabilities unlock day by day as compute scales. And the godfathers of AI understand what comes next. We're not building mere tools anymore. We're building things we might not be able to control. But here's what most people don't understand. The meter graph isn't an outlier. It's the pattern. Chart after chart after chart shows the same exponential trend. Physics benchmarks, chemistry, biology, math, coding. In almost every domain we can measure, AI is doubling in capability every 4 to 7 months. Just sit with that for a second. It's not just coding, it's everything. But here's the question skeptics always ask. Exponential growth can't last forever. Eventually, it has to plateau, right? And they might point to this meme about a baby. My 3-month-old son is now twice as big as when he was born. He's on track to weigh 7.5 trillion pounds by age 10. Obviously ridiculous. Growth curves flatten. So why should we believe that AI is different? Here's why. The baby meme is based on just 2 data points. If you zoom in on the baby's actual growth curve, you'd see it's already tapering. And the meter trend is based on 15 data points across 6 years. And the curve isn't flattening. In fact, it's accelerating. In 2024 to 2025, the doubling time dropped from 7 months to 4 months. That's much faster than Moore's law. And Gordon Moore made his observation in 1965 based on only a handful of data points, while meter have 15 data points. It's actually a far better supported trend. And the question isn't whether exponential growth can't happen. The question is, where does it stop? Well, here's the part that keeps researchers awake at night. In 2024, researchers surveyed thousands of AI scientists. On average, they estimated a 16% chance that AI causes human extinction. 1 in 6. Literal Russian roulette odds. And the CEO of Anthropic's probability that AI causes human extinction has risen to 25%. Reminder, this is normal in AI. And no, he's not just creating hype. That's just wrong. Sorry. He gets only hate for admitting this. Nobody wants to hear this. And he's been saying things like this before starting the company. This is a widespread belief in AI, even among professors and scientists with no financial incentives. It's not just the executives. Think about that. Can you name another time in history when the inventors of a technology warned it might destroy humanity while they were still building it? Would you get on a plane if the designer said it had a 25% chance of exploding mid-air? Except it's not just you on that plane, it's everyone forced to board. Once AI can automate month-long or year-long coding tasks, it can automate AI research itself, self-improving AI. Sam Altman used to call this really scary because things could get out of control very quickly. Now, OpenAI is explicitly racing toward it. Microsoft AI CEO Mustafa Suleyman says we should never do this. It's too likely to cause extinction. Right now, there are only a few thousand AI researchers at the frontier. Those few thousand people drove the progress we saw on the meter graph. But with AI agents, they could soon be outnumbered 100 to 1. And these AI agents will work 100 times faster. And Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, says Claude is now writing 90% of the code at Anthropic. He was mocked for predicting this 6 months ago. AIs went from writing 0 to most of the code in a few years. AI is already writing code that's good enough to replace junior programmers. Dario Amodei thinks it could soon wipe out 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs. How much longer until it starts replacing senior employees, too? But you may ask, AI progress has to flatten out sometime, right? Or, well, every exponential is actually a sigmoid. Yes, but we don't know where the danger threshold is. It could be here, or here, or here. We're climbing a curve in the fog, and we have no idea which step leads to systems we can't control. This brings us to the original question. Are we in a bubble? Here's what's strange. Every few months for the past 5 years, AI skeptics have declared the same thing. This time, it's over. Scaling is dead. The bubble is about to pop. Yann LeCun predicted AI would lack a basic understanding of physics.
I believe in grounded intelligence. I don't think we can train a machine to be intelligent purely from text. So for example, I take an object, I put it on the table, and I push the table. It's completely obvious to you that the object will be pushed with the table, right? There's no text in the world, I believe, that explains this. And so if you train a machine as powerful as it could be, your GPT 5000 or whatever it is, it's never going to learn about this. That information is just not present in any text.
Yet just 1 year later, GPT 3.5 could explain this exactly. What he confidently said would never happen actually happened just 1 year later. And much of Yann's premise is that AI can't be dangerous because it'll be like this super smart, obedient staff member that they simply won't give agency to. Basically, he believes AI won't have the ability to do long-term planning and have self-direction. And yeah, here's a benchmark where you can see just how much more agency AIs have been getting. Here's what makes skeptics so persuasive. When you're talking about world-changing technology, the skeptic always sounds more reasonable. One side says, this will change everything. The other says, come on, nothing ever happens. You can't just make the model bigger and expect it to keep getting smarter forever. There has to be a ceiling. The second person sounds rational, grounded, but that's not evidence, it's a vibe. So let's look at the actual track record. People like Gary Marcus and Yann LeCun have been predicting the death of scaling since 2019. Practically every year, they say it's finally hitting the wall. Every year, they're wrong. The just make it bigger approach has worked across 15 orders of magnitude. That's one of the most consistent trends in the history of technology.
Every few years they say neural nets are overhyped and it's all about to come crashing down and stop. And they've been wrong every time, and I think they'll continue to be wrong.
I mean, AI can code entire websites from scratch, write hit songs, and win art competitions. But a common sticking point for people is that it still makes mistakes. And for example, there are papers coming out like, AI has passed the music Turing test, 0 media coverage. And headlines like, over the past 4 weeks, a new AI creation has debuted on a Billboard chart in each week. People see 6 months go by without a revolutionary change in their personal workflow and declare, see, it's plateauing. The bubble is popping. This is AI amnesia. We're incapable of remembering how limited these systems were just months or years ago. 2 years ago, it was hard to imagine that models were going to do grade school math. They couldn't do the most basic problems. It was actually alarming. People forget. If you told experts in 2020 that AI could do all that, they'd laugh you out of the room. Pure science fiction. Now it's normal. And because it's normal, people assume progress has stopped. But the data tells a different story. AI isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. But if you were paying attention and following the trend lines, you could have predicted this is where we're heading. "10 years ago, before ChatGPT existed, Tim Urban wrote an article predicting where we'd be today. If you'd invested $3,000 in NVIDIA after reading it, you'd be a millionaire right now. He started with this graph, human progress over time. What does it feel like to stand here? Wild, right? Living on the steep part of an exponential curve. But here's the thing, when you're on a time graph, you can't actually see what's to your right. So this is how it actually feels. Normal, completely normal. Tim Urban explains it with a thought experiment. Imagine you take George Washington from 1750 and bring him to 2025.
1750 was not that long ago, 265 years ago. Everything always was in a blackout. It was a blackout all the time. There was no electricity. There were no light bulbs. There's obviously no way to transport yourself other than horse and boat. Almost nothing that's cool about today existed then. So if you brought him here and he saw cars zooming down the highway, and he saw the internet, and he saw the iPhone, and you told him about the International Space Station, and you told him about relativity, and you told him about airplanes. You can go on and on and on. I think that it would be such a big shock that I don't think that he would just be mind blown or surprised. I think he would die. How long do you have to go into the future in order to die from how surprised you are about the progress they've made? And I've called that a die progress unit, DPU.
But let's say George Washington got jealous and wanted to do the same thing, shock someone from the past by bringing them to his time.
And he says, okay, you know what? I'm taking the time machine and I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna get Da Vinci, because he was 48 years old in the year 1500, about the same problem. He's like, I'm gonna go back a DPU of my own. I'm gonna get Da Vinci, I'm gonna bring him back here and watch him die. The problem is, if you did that, Da Vinci would be surprised. I mean, he would be taken aback with, there'd be some mind-bending stuff about space and physics, for example, the telescope and a lot of things like that. It would be cool for Da Vinci. I don't think he would die. That's not enough. It's not the same.
If Washington wanted to find someone who would die of shock at being brought to 1750,
he would have to go all the way back to before the agricultural revolution, back like 12,000 years ago. If you got someone from then, someone who had just lived as a hunter-gatherer, before the agricultural revolution, there weren't really cities. So sometime before, large groups of people even gathered together. And you brought him to 1750, and you showed him these towering churches and ships that could cross the ocean and all the things like that. I think that person may collapse and die. So at that point, the DPU, going back, is you need a lot more time to create a DPU.
And to find someone who would be amazed by what humans had in 12,000 BC, you'd have to go back to 100,000 BC, before we discovered fire and language. During hunter-gatherer times, the first DPU was over 100,000 years. During the agricultural revolution, the next DPU was over 10,000 years. During the Industrial Revolution, the next DPU was 250 years. And following that trend, the next DPU might be only a decade or two away. Now, some might be thinking, nah, the tech CEOs are just trying to create hype like always. That's fair. CEOs certainly do try to create hype. But here's what's strange. Experts in AI don't have a hype problem. They actually have the opposite problem. Unbelievably, most AI experts actually have a terrible track record in the other direction. They consistently predict too little progress, over and over and over. This is super weird. In every other industry, experts predict too much progress, then are disappointed. Here's why even smart people keep getting AI predictions wrong. See, the main reason is that we're hardwired to think in straight lines. Our brains literally didn't evolve to understand the kind of exponential progress we're seeing in the 21st century. Let's look at the human progress graph again. When we imagine the progress of the next 30 years, we look back to the progress of the previous 30 as an indicator of how much will likely happen. When we think about the extent to which the world will change in the 21st century, we just take the 20th century progress and add it to the year 2000. This was the same mistake George Washington made when he brought back Da Vinci to the 1700s. He assumed equal time gaps meant equal progress. It's most intuitive for us to be thinking linearly when we should be thinking exponentially. If someone is being more clever about it, they might predict the advances of the next 30 years, not by looking at the previous 30 years, but by taking the current rate of progress and judging based on that. They'd be more accurate, but still way off. In order to think about the future correctly, you need to imagine things moving at a much faster rate than they're moving now. And this chart is actually worse than you'd expect. Most people's intuition is more like this purple line here. This is why AI keeps surprising us, why AI's plateauing articles keep being wrong. We're not built to grasp exponential change, and AI progress is exponential. The reason why the pendulum swings back and forth so much, from wow, look at how much AI progress is happening, we're so back, to it's so over. People look at the same data and come to opposite conclusions. It all comes down to zoom level. Remember this graph from earlier? Here's the simplified version. Looks exponential, right? Smooth curve going up and to the right. But whether the curve looks exponential depends entirely on where you're looking at it from. Let's zoom in. Now it looks flat, linear, maybe even declining. This is where the skeptics live, zoomed in, watching week-to-week or month-to-month changes and declaring the trend is broken. Legendary futurist Ray Kurzweil, who predicted AGI by 2029 all the way back in 1996, explains, every exponential graph is actually made up of S-curves, and S is created by the wave of progress when a new paradigm sweeps the world. The curve goes through three phases: slow growth, the early phase of exponential growth, rapid growth, the late explosive phase of exponential growth, and a leveling off as the particular paradigm matures. So here's what's actually happening. When you're zoomed in on a single S-curve, you see it flatten. GPT-4 comes out, makes huge leaps, then improvements slow down. The skeptics declare victory. See, scaling is dead. But zoom out. The overall trend is still exponential because the new paradigms keep arriving. GPT-4 plateaus, then reasoning models break through. Transformers plateau, then multi-models arrive. One S-curve flattens, another begins. The plateau might last months or even a year, but it doesn't change the exponential trajectory. It's just what every exponential growth curve looks like up close. This is why the pendulum keeps swinging. The skeptics are watching individual S-curves flatten, while others are watching the exponential trend made up of dozens of S-curves stacked upon each other. And if history is any guide, the flattening doesn't last. It's just crazy that the end goal of these AI companies is recursive self-improvement. AI systems that can improve themselves. If they succeed, the gap between humans and superintelligent AI would be larger than the gap between humans and ants. Let's take a look at our distorted view of intelligence. Not long ago, before ChatGPT, AI wasn't even as smart as a chimp. It couldn't reliably identify a hot dog. We laughed at it. That's adorable. The funny robot can do monkey tricks. But now, it's discovering new laws of physics. Yes, that's a real story. Sources in the description. But remember, intelligence is jagged. This is why the meter graph matters. A more accurate view looks like this. Imagine you have one lily pad in a pond, and it doubles every day. 30 days later, the pond is completely filled with lily pads. What day is the pond half full? Did you guess day 15? Actually, it's day 29. That's right. The pond was only half full just one day before the end. The crucial lesson here is that progress looks like it's barely happening at all. And then suddenly, you blink and the pond is full. What day are we at with AI? Here's another way to visualize it. How long would it take for computers to match the computing power of the human brain? Lake Michigan has roughly the same volume in ounces of water as the human brain has in computations per second. If computing power doubles every 18 months, like Moore's law, watch what happens. The lake looks completely empty. Then, suddenly, it's completely filled, meaning we've hit the same computer processing power as the human brain. We're currently in the last seconds of this video. This is exponential growth. Slow, then suddenly all at once.
So we are on a trajectory to build machines that are smarter and smarter. And one day, it's very plausible that they will be smarter than us. And then they will have their own agency, their own goals, which may not be aligned with ours. What happens to us then? Poof.
Eliezer Yudkowsky compares this to the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere.
Khrushchev and Kennedy knew they were climbing a ladder. They didn't know which rung would trigger nuclear war, but they knew that continuing to climb would eventually lead to hundreds of millions dying. Kennedy later estimated there was a 1/3 to 1/2 chance of all-out nuclear war.
We are blindly driving into a fog, despite the warnings of scientists like myself that this trajectory could lead to loss of control.
The only rational response when you're climbing a ladder in the dark and you don't know which rung leads to annihilation, stop climbing. Just like with nukes, we don't know which specific rung on the ladder leads to superintelligence we can't control. So maybe we should stop climbing before we find out. Just 5 years ago, AI scientists predicted we were 25 years away from AGI. But what progress scientists predicted we'd get in 2040 is already happening. But it's not just the speed that's terrifying, it's the scope of what AI could be. Superintelligence is not something we can remotely grasp.
Stupid is an 85 IQ, and really smart is an 135 IQ. We don't have a word for 12,573 IQ. We don't know what that is. And us trying to understand that is like, a bumblebee trying to understand Keynesian economics.
We could try to conceive of the levels of intelligence being a staircase like this. Just one step up would be massive. 2 steps would exceed the gap between chimps and humans. But the scale goes way higher than that once the recursive self-improvement intelligence explosion kicks off. As Tim Urban puts it, there's no way to know what ASI will do or what the consequences will be for us. Anyone who pretends otherwise doesn't understand what superintelligence means. So what do we know? What we do know is that humans' utter dominance on this earth suggests a clear rule. With intelligence comes power, which means an ASI, when we create it, will be the most powerful being in the history of life on Earth. And all living things, including humans, will be entirely at its whim. As far as we're concerned, if an ASI comes to being, there is now an omnipotent God on Earth. And the all-important question for us is, will it be a nice God? If you want to see a realistic scenario of what a superintelligence might actually do, watch this video next. It's deeply researched and written by top AI researchers. Hey, I'm Drew, and thanks so much for watching.